The TWIF series returns with the team review episode. Everyone's favorite. Joining me, my trusty cohort and roommate, the Gauch. We're here to rate the team, Cgauch, and let's jump right into it with me and the new guy replacing Ben, JP, Lily's boyfriend. So starting with
Sounds good.
yeah, fuck yeah. So starting with my team, Jalen Hurts, the running quarterback. I wanted to go for a running quarterback this year because they have such high floors. They rack up those rushing yards. Josh Allen, the weird example of a guy that can do both. Hurts is more of a pure runner, whereas Allen's probably like a top three QB in the league. And then I went Najee Harris in the first round, which honestly I don't love because I think Pittsburgh is going to suck floppy. Then I got burned with Cam Akers, but thankfully I have the handcuff there with Darrell Henderson. It's just going to be a perennial pain in the ass to try to figure out which guy is going to get the touches. Stephon Diggs, the guy with the super low floor. Sutton, Russ loves to throw that deep ball. Remember, he got moved to Denver this offseason, and Sutton's a guy that plays a lot along the outside lines. George Kittle, injury prone but top tier. And as far as Singletary goes, again, part of that great Buffalo offense. So, what were your thoughts on sort of the core of my team as you look at it here?
I really think Najee is like a solid RB1 this season. Like he's going to get a lot of the work. It really sucks you got screwed by Cam Akers and JP's jumped out to like a pretty solid lead so far. I like Jalen Hurts a lot this year. I have the Eagles winning that division, and I think Jalen Hurts can potentially be like a top five quarterback in fantasy. Love Stephon Diggs. I think he's like one of the top five receivers in the league. He's elite. And then Cortland Sutton's about as good as a wide receiver two you can get. He's getting an upgraded quarterback, and I also think he has like big play potential. Kittle, I'm kind of worried about because he's injury prone, and I believe he's currently questionable right now with
That's
another
the
injury that
case.
was just updated.
Yep.
And then Devin Singletary's a pretty solid flex. He's a running back for an elite offense, probably the best offense in the league right now. Matt Prater, I think, is a decent kicker. I wouldn't say that Arizona is an elite offense, but it's a solid offense where you're going to get plenty of field goal points from him. And then the Chargers defense is elite. I think they're really, really, really good. But I would give your team a B.
If we look at the bench here, obviously Henderson jumps out at you as a guy with value, but Melvin Gordon has a huge contract, and even though he's been supplanted in the depth chart, what do you expect from Melvin Gordon this season?
I really like Javante Williams this year, but I expect Melvin Gordon to be like a Kareem Hunt to a Nick Chubb type of deal going on in Denver. I think he'll get some of the goal line work and like screenplays and stuff like that. So I think he'll be like a viable like running back option.
Nice. So I give myself a B minus. What would you rate me?
A B.
Excellent. The JP's team here, Josh Allen, obviously a hard carry guy on a top tier offense. How good do you think the Bills' offense is?
I would say top three. I just said they were elite with Devin Singletary, but I think top three and they're not three.
Love that. Leonard Fournette's a guy that gets a lot of attention, but I feel like Tampa Bay almost has too many mouths to feed. He's not a guy that I would want to really hitch my wagon to. Of course, he has Jonathan Taylor, who's the ultimate hard carry, really. But what do you think about Fournette going into this year, and how high are you on Fournette in terms of a running back
I'm not
option for
high on him at
fantasy?
all, really. He came into camp overweight, about like 260, 270 this year. He's been getting a lot of hype, though. I think it's just him being a part of the Bucks offense, but I don't really like him this year. I love Jonathan Taylor, obviously. Like him or Christian McCaffrey are the number one overall picks. Like you can't really go wrong with that. The only thing I'm worried about with JP's team is like typically like the first round pick you want to go like running back Jonathan Taylor or Christian McCaffrey and you can get an elite receiver or an RB2 and Josh Allen. And I don't really see Fournette as like a viable RB2 option. Like I could 100% be wrong. That's just like my opinion on it. So I really wish he would have gone like Taylor, Allen, and like a Mike Evans here to get like a more solid overall like balanced team. Because right now like I don't think his RB2 is very strong and his receivers aren't very strong either.
It's a top-heavy team. That's how that reads to me, especially if the Bucks get ahead and they really pound the rock. But this is a team to me that screams first-time fantasy owner because if you look at the bench, the guy has two backup quarterbacks. So what would you rate his team?
Probably about a C plus.
Really, that's interesting. because I went as far as to give this guy an A minus. I think he's pretty sharp.
An A minus. Wow.
No, just kidding. It's a B plus as I consult my notes here. I think the lack of depth really hurts him, and I don't love the York kicker pick. I think Cleveland is going to suck floppy until they get their quarterback. I'm not a big Schultz guy. I'm not high on the Cowboys. And like I said, I think there's a lot of mouths to feed on Tampa. So this
But
is
you
one of
think you would rate his team equal to your team?
better. It's a B plus, and
Wow.
I gave myself a B minus. I just think he's going to have tremendous punching power with Josh Allen and Jonathan Taylor. I think those guys can they can average near 50 every week. And
Yeah.
whenever you have like that high of a floor with these guys who are going to get so many looks and are never really going to have blow up starts, it
Mhm.
makes it hard to fuck up. So even though I feel like his team is pretty shallow, on its face value, I do give it the B plus, and I'm not really factoring in owner ranking, owner ability here. So like I don't think he's gonna manage very well or like be that active on the waiver wire.
I think like you could have like a combo of like maybe a combined for 40 every week with like Hertz and Najee, but also like I like your team better because you have that elite receiver in Diggs. You have an RB1 in Najee. He is an RB1 in Taylor. Like obviously like the elite over like one overall possibly. But like I like the value of Hertz getting him like in whatever round you got him because like you know he had to take Allen in the second or third, and then you also have a stronger wide receiver too than he does. Like I would even say Cortland Sutton's better than his entire receiving core.
Yeah,
And then you
definitely.
have Kittle, which the only thing about Kittle is he's injury prone, but he's also elite. And I don't think Dalton Schultz is elite. I think he's in a good offense and a good opportunity, but I wouldn't put him among like the top three, like top four tight ends in the league. And then your flex is definitely way better than his.
Yeah, this is like one of those Cameron top heavy teams where they have a couple guys that could auto win them the game and hard carry, but there's really not a lot to be scared of other than that. And I'm not really considering owner's strength, like I said. If you consider owner's strength, I think you bump it down to like a C plus instead of a B plus. But
Yeah. I'm not considering owner strength. I like your roster. I would be more happy with your roster than I would be with his. Like
that
if I
makes me
was just
happy.
like Ben getting out of jail and like appearing like and seeing my auto drafted team, I would prefer to see yours over his. So that's why I
Excellent.
give him a C plus.
That is an excellent point analogy. Who do you think's going to win between us this week? Obviously, he has a big edge already.
I definitely think he clears you this week. I think Cam Akers just kind of fucked you up really hard.
Agreed. All right, let's move on to the next. Clap for Bacon and Lily's team. Now you can lead the way here with Clap for Bacon telling me what you think.
I really love Lamar Jackson this year. I think he could be like the number one quarterback in fantasy this year. I like his rushing upside. Like you love, a lot of people like J.K. Dobbins, but I like Lamar Jackson because you're getting like the quarterback like potential upside, but you also have like Lamar's probably going to be stealing a lot of those like red zone touchdowns, so I love that. And then Dalvin Cook, I would say he's an elite running back when healthy, and I think he's showed that he can stay healthy over the last couple seasons. So expect a big year from him. I really don't like David Montgomery, not because he's a bad player, but just because the Bears are just absolutely fucking god awful, and their O line's terrible. I could see Justin Fields kind of like picking that offense up a bit, but I more so just dislike the position David Montgomery's in being on that offense. Obviously, I don't like Brandon Cooks. He's on Houston. Any team from on the Texans is just absolutely terrible. CeeDee Lamb, I could see potentially being the wide receiver one overall this year. So I love that pick. I actually kind of like Kevin's team. I think he has a pretty solid roster overall. I think Elijah Moore is a good flex. Obviously, the number one kicker in the league with Baltimore. Chiefs defense is a big surprise, though. I wouldn't put them elite, and I'm a Chiefs fan. Like I wouldn't even put them probably in the top 10 defenses in the league.
Yeah, I agree with everything. Justin Tucker, obviously, God tier is super accurate. He's not one of those guys who's going to be on a top five offense. I feel like there are two schools of thought to drafting kickers. One is you get a guy who is going to be on a top tier offense and going to be kicking a lot of extra points and just going to be on their side of the field a lot. And then there's the school of thought of I'm going to draft like kicker talent and maybe on offense that kicks more field goals. Absolutely high on CD. I love him. Gallup's banged up. They traded Amari Cooper for peanuts, and the Cowboys are going to score their points. I'm really worried about the Cowboys line. They lost two great linemen, and their left tackle Tyron Smith's hurt as usual. I think the Cowboys are barely going to be 500, and I actually give Philly the advantage to win that division. But out of all that being said, I do think CD is still going to get his, and out of all the Cowboys, he's the only one that I would have considered drafting. I
Yeah,
love
I agree with that as well. Like I definitely see the Eagles winning that division, and like I would be willing to bet that they win like over 12 and a half games this year.
I think they'll win 11 or 12 personally.
Yeah.
And I love Hawkinson. Detroit, I think, is a team that isn't going to be as bad as they were last year. I think they'll win 6 or 7 games, but Hawkinson's a really talented guy, probably a top 7 tight end in the league. Obviously, Kelsey's like number 1, and it's not close. Then you got like your Waller and Kittle types, and then sort of like on that next tier, I'm thinking of guys like Gesicki and Hawkinson. They might not be getting as many looks or as big a part of an offense as some of those other guys, but they're still very talented and are an option within their offense.
Yeah. I like TJ Hawkinson, but I don't think I would have him that high. I would put him more towards like Dalton Schultz kind of tier. But
Yeah,
I would probably give Kevin's roster like a B plus. I like Dalvin Cook a lot. Like Lamar Jackson, I think could be the number one quarterback overall this year, and CeeDee Lamb, I think has like wide receiver one overall potential in fantasy. So I like his roster. I wish his like flex or like wide receiver two was a little stronger, but I'd probably give him a B plus. Yeah.
I gave him a B plus as well, and the reason I think he doesn't get an A is because of what you pointed out with David Montgomery. On these abysmal joke tier offenses, the running backs just don't get that many looks because the team is ineffectual and they'll be down by 2 touchdowns after 10 minutes. And a lot of times the running game just gets sort of phased out of the game plan.
Mm.
Chicago's going to be a fucking disgrace, and David Montgomery is just not going to get that many looks. And the reason that you get David Montgomery is because he doesn't split time.
Yeah.
He's not a timeshare guy, but I mean, you're sharing time with a punter, really, if you're on a
Definitely
Chicago
don't like
offense.
him. Definitely don't like him this week either. Like they're going against San Francisco, who's like a big run heavy offense. So like he's really not going to get that many snaps on the field anyways, and more likely than not, he's going to be playing from behind. So they're going to be trying to throw the ball to like Darnell Mooney or something.
Yeah. Overall, I really like this team for Kevin, and I think we can move on to Lily's team. Like, just give me your thoughts on this.
You can start it off.
Sure. Patrick Mahomes, obviously very explosive, throws the deep ball a lot. I feel like he's nerfed down in fantasy a bit without Tyreek. Now, whether you think that the offense overall is going to be better without Tyreek, I feel like that's a different question. But that fantasy explosiveness of Tyreek and Mahomes was very hard to match. It was absolutely jaw-dropping. McKinnon, I'm not a fan of. The Chiefs pass a lot, especially for a team that plays from ahead. And because of how much harder their division got, I don't feel like they're going to be playing in as many stomp games. Rashad Penny, I mean, Geno Smith's his quarterback. Seattle's going to be horrific. I hate that pick. Mike Evans, big name 7 years ago. He's in a crowded field of talent. And I'm not saying that like Tom Brady's washed, but like he did retire, and I'm not so sure about Tampa. I don't think they're as lethal as they were for Brady's first 2 years. I think that Brady legitimately wanted to call it quits and came back, and I don't think he'll be bad, but I just don't believe in Tampa as much as I did in previous seasons. What do you think about those first four cats?
I really love Mahomes. Obviously, like being a Chiefs fan, I think he was like an elite quarterback. He top three like fantasy potential with like Lamar, Herbert, and like Josh Allen. Like I would put him up there with those guys. Like potentially still like a number three or like a two spot. But I like McKinnon as far as like watching live football goes. Like I honestly think he should be like the Chiefs RB1. Like they should have traded Tyreek and like Clyde Edwards-Helaire and gotten more picks or like even a player and some picks back. But for a fantasy standpoint, I don't really see him being a viable RB1. It looks like she tried to do like a wide receiver or like an RB0 strategy by going like receiver, receiver, tight end, receiver. Like she has Mike Evans, which I I don't think he was relevant only 7 years ago. Like I think he's elite still. Like he's one of the top receivers in the league.
Will
And
he
the
be
Justin
ranked
Jeff,
top 10 for receivers at the end of the year?
yeah, probably like five.
Okay.
But Justin Jefferson, obviously like wide receiver overall, like one overall potential with like Cup, him, like CeeDee Lamb. He's obviously elite. Darren Waller, I think's gonna have like a really big year with Adams and Hunter Renfro, like pulling a lot of the targets and spreading defenses out. So Waller's gonna have like a lot of those like one-on-one matchups with the linebacker, and there's really like not any linebackers in the league that can cover him. So I think he's like an elite tight end. She has Michael Thomas, but Woods is starting at flex. I could see why like Michael Thomas has kind of been injured and he's still like kind of a question mark now. He used to be elite, like the slant god. But I think if he like even returns to like anywhere close to what he was, like I obviously she probably has the best receiving core in the league, but it's also a standard league, so she's not going to get like half point receptions or 4 point per receptions. And her running backs are just like terrible. Like Rashad Penny's on a terrible offense. He's not very good. Like he's not like she doesn't have a true RB1. Like she has like a bunch of backup running backs, even like on her bench. Like Isaiah Pachenko, he's a rookie for the Chiefs, and Jarrett McKinnon doesn't even start for the Chiefs. So it's like her RB core is extremely weak. Her quarterback's obviously elite, and her receiving core and tight end spots are elite. And she even has a solid defense and kicker. Like, I think she has a solid team, but like her running backs are extremely weak. It's kind of hard to rate this just because her running backs are terrible.
I think that Koo's been elite in previous seasons and he's very talented, but I think Atlanta's going to be horrible this season and he's just not going to get that many chances to kick. And
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think they're
Robert
good.
Woods is coming off of a blown out knee and he's on a worse offensive situation than he was last season.
Mm.
And Michael Thomas doesn't have Drew Brees throwing to him and he doesn't have Sean Payton. Like those guys, a lot of these guys were like peak names like 4 years ago, but have lost value for different reasons. So I'm not high on this team at all. I rated it a D.
Wow, a D.
Yeah, because the
Um,
running backs are just going to kill her every week.
yeah, but when your receiving core is like that good, it can kind of carry you. Like those are a lot of like big touchdown guys. Like I would say like Michael Thomas, Jefferson, and Evans could all have like over 1,000 yards this year if Thomas is healthy and like stays healthy throughout the year. Because I expect like Jameis and the Saints to actually have like a good offensive year. Um, I wouldn't say D, maybe like a C plus B minus. I think like C plus just because like I like RBs, so I think I would have to go C plus. I don't know as far as a D. That's far.
Okay. We can move on now to Weston's team, terribly named, and Jackson. Two very hard hitters, two experienced owners, and I think Weston just knocked it out of the park. I'll start us out right out the gate. Aaron Rodgers, he's missing his favorite target, but it's still Aaron Rodgers. He's still going to put up his numbers. Derrick Henry, very good. Yeah, he got hurt last year. He's on a run heavy offense. He's on an above average team. And I don't think he's a hype guy or a guy who is going to be severely altered by injury. I think he's going to come back strong. Harris, the running back for New England, this is a run heavy offense. Mac Jones is not going to be asked to do a lot. Bill Belichick's just going to play like a conservative macro focus style, relying on his defense. Debo Samuel, I mean, as long as he can stay healthy, he's going to be elite. He gets run opportunities. This is a guy that I wanted to get on my team, and I just consider him to be insanely explosive, even with Trey Lance. And Higgins is on a great passing offense. And if you think that Jamar Chase is going to have a sophomore slump, T. Higgins is the guy that's going to benefit from that. Mark Andrews, top three tight end. DJ Moore, the top receiver on a Panther attack that, for the first time since 2015, is actually going to be somewhat scary. With Baker Mayfield leading the way, the Panthers are going to be above average. And waiting in the wings is Sam Darnold in case Baker gets hurt. I know Darnold got banged up in the preseason, but having a solid backup to push the starter, I think, is a big deal. And I think the Carolina Panthers are going to be worth watching for the first time in 7 years this season. This is a terrifying team from Weston. What are your thoughts on it, Gouch?
I would agree. I love his roster. I think him and me probably have the two best rosters in the league. Derrick Henry, obviously, I don't think he's going to slow down even with like a weekend offensive line. They're playing the Giants this week, so I love this matchup. Damian Harris, he's like going to get his like he's a good RB2 option, I think like low end RB2, but he gets like touchdowns and he loves to like get the passing plays, so he gets a lot of little like scrappy pass yards with the screens. Rodgers, obviously, like Hall of Fame quarterback. I don't see him winning another Super Bowl, but I think he's a great fantasy option if you aren't or are not able to get like one of those like elite rushing type quarterbacks. And then his receiving core is nasty. Debo is obviously amazing. He got a really good contract this year, and he has rushing incentives, so I think he's going to be like a top 5 receiver in fantasy this year. T. Higgins is about as good of a wide receiver two you can get. I think he even might outscore Jamar Chase this year, not even because of a sophomore slump, but I think like in fantasy wise, he kind of keeps up with him and like gets the more consistent catches. Jamar Chase more so gets like the fades and like big play potential. Mark Andrews, top 2 tight end in fantasy. I'd probably put like Kelsey 1, him 2, and then Waller 3, and then the Kittle 4. DJ Moore, I think, is a really good receiving option and even a viable like wide receiver 2 option. He has him as a flex here. Kicker, I think is a part of a good offense. I think that entire like conference is going to be elite offensively, and Denver even has a solid defense. So I feel like they're going to get the ball quite often and get a lot of scoring opportunities with Russell Wilson at quarterback as well. Packers defense, I'm not very high on, but even his bench, like he has James Robinson, Alexander Madison, Delvin Cook's handcuff, Amon St. Brown. I like him this year. Damian Pierce, starting running back for Houston, which is like a terrible offense, but that's the starting running back. Like it's always good to have that on your bench and have the depth. Like he just really needs an RB2. His wide receivers and flex are set. And then George Pickens, he's a dog from Georgia. Haven't really gotten to see him play yet, but I think he's going to have a good year out of Pittsburgh. I would give Weston like an A minus.
I gave Weston an A plus. I think he's far and away the best team in the league. And obviously we mentioned that we're not taking like owner talent into account, but I think he's like perennially like a top 2 owner.
Mm,
Very intelligent and shrewd, like always keeps up with it, never makes mistakes.
yeah, really
Love,
active on the waiver wire. I would say
yeah,
like him and Spencer are 2 of the better owners in the league.
oh yeah. Love the St. Brown pick. Love the Madison pick because Cook has an injury history. DJ Moore was a guy I was targeting. Debo was a guy I was targeting. I mean, I just adore this team. I felt like by round 3 it was already like great. Weston's elite. We're fucking 10 minutes into the draft and Weston is already elite. So another classic from Weston. I'm just glad I'm not in his fucking division anymore.
Mhm.
All right, now we're talking about Jackson's team. He starts out with the mighty Trey Lance. After that, goes with James Conner, who no longer has to compete with Chase. Excuse me, who went down to Miami, very hyped team, flavor of the month team. And then Christian McCaffrey, who's due for a phenomenal year, finally having a serviceable quarterback, and the Panthers are coming into their own as an above average team. Keenan Allen, an 1,000-yard plus receiver year after year after year. Going to be on a prolific offense. Davis on Buffalo, basically the other guy who's not Diggs, the second receiver lining up on the other side. He's solid. I hate the Pittsburgh tight end, honestly, and I'm not high on Waddle, and he has Cincy's kicker. So what do you think about this team?
I like the Trey Lance pick just because like the value pick, you can get him like super late in your drafts. James Conner, I'm not very high on, but he is like the running back for Arizona, part of like one of the better offenses in the league. But I do think Kyler Murray is going to be stealing a lot of those red zone touchdowns,
Good point.
and I don't think it's not out of question to say like he's injury prone. So you got to see if he stays healthy. But like that's a solid RB2 option, I would assume. Christian McCaffrey, like potentially the number 1 overall fantasy player every year that he just plays every game and stays healthy, which I think he is capable of. Like I don't think his injuries were like reoccurring injuries. They were kind of like shoulder and then the ankle. Like it wasn't like he tweaked his ankle and then he was trying to come back and then tweaked his ankle again. It's going to take
Right.
longer. There's nothing like that. So I could see him being potentially the number 1 overall player in fantasy. Keenan Allen, amazing receiver, about as consistent as you can get for a wide receiver 1. Gabe Davis, I think he's poised to have a big year, but also like I don't think there's lack of like pass to go around for him and like Diggs as far as production goes. I think he's like an elite wide receiver too, about as good as you can get. That elite offense. I agree with you as well on the tight end for Pittsburgh. I don't like him, but I do remember him, like me and him both being like late in the draft, just being like, oh shit, our tight end's about to suck because we're stacking RBs and receivers. I like Jalen Waddle this year. I think Tyreek is going to open up a lot of things for him, and he's also like one of those elite receivers. Not elite production wise, but as far as speed goes, he's one of those receivers that can really get out there and like get some separation, have some big play potential. The Cincinnati kicker is good, a part of a great offense. Broncos defense is solid as well. They're just a part of a really tough division, so 6 games out of the year, about half the season, he's going to be playing against like one of the elitist, like best teams in the league with Raiders offense, Chiefs offense, and Chargers offense. So I would like to see him drop them, but I know he picked them just for week 1 and 2 because they're playing Seattle. So that's a really good matchup for them. And then they play Houston. So like I expect big weeks out of them for week 1 and 2, and I expect him to drop them and get another defense in the rotation. Sammy Watkins, I don't know. I wouldn't say a quarterback upgrade. I would say he's in a potentially a better situation where he's going to be able to be a wide receiver 2, potentially wide receiver 1, and part of that Green Bay offense, depending on how Lazard goes, if he can stay healthy and get back on the field. So I like Sammy Watkins a lot. I wish we would have kept him with the Chiefs, and I think he's in a good offensive situation there. So I like his bench. He is the number one, like Juju's wide receiver 1 for Kansas City. I do not like Christian Kirk. I think he got like a big bullshit contract for not really doing a whole lot, and he obviously has tight end depth there. And I expect him to drop James Cook after his one play and fumble.
Yeah, I'm also not high on Christian Kirk. Miami Dolphins over under 11.5 wins this season.
Ooh, I would say 11.
Okay. What about Mozart? That's another guy on Miami who shifted teams and a lot of people are sort of looking towards. I know that Chase is there, but I think Mozart's going to get some looks.
Yeah, I could see him and Chase Edmonds kind of like sharing time. I expect Chase Edmonds to be like the big production back from that offense, getting like the bulk of the work, and I expect him to have a really good year.
So what would you rate this team?
Hmm, like a B minus.
I give it a B. Alrighty, we can move on. Bing Bong 3 Ragnarok and Marky's Funky Bunch. The brand new first time fantasy player takes on the player with the losing record. This will be an interesting week 1 matchup. And we forgot to call the previous 2 matchups. So who do you think is going to win between Clap 4 and Lily?
Let me go back and look.
While you check it out, I'm going to predict a Clap 4 victory. I think Lamar Jackson's going to embarrass the Jets. Cook's going to find the end zone. CD will find the end zone. He'll put up 95, and Lily's running backs will let her down.
I'm actually gonna go with Lily here. I think Evans. I obviously her running backs are extremely weak, but I could see them getting like a combined like 10, 15 points together. And then I think Evans, the Dallas matchup, I think that's going to be an extremely high scoring game. I think Justin Jefferson with Green Bay, that's going to be a high scoring game. Darren Waller and the Chargers, I think that's going to be a high scoring game. And even like Robert Woods, like I think he could potentially get like a touchdown against the Giants, unless Michael Thomas decides to play, and then I could see him getting like a decent game, like 10 or 12 points against Atlanta. So, or she could honestly put in Brees Hall over one of her running backs and would probably perform better. But I could see her beating Kevin with like 105 to like 95.
Nice. And the Weston Jackson matchup, 2 paragons.
Um, I think I'm gonna go Weston here. Debo Samuel, I like him a lot this week against Chicago. T. Higgins against Pitt. Like I think Mark Andrews against the Jets. Like DJ Moore, I think he's gonna have a big week just because I think Baker Mayfield's gonna tear up Cleveland.
Agreed.
And Derrick Henry against the Giants, and I think Green Bay and Minnesota is going to be a high-scoring game. So I think Weston pulls out the win here.
I agree. Debo will pop off. DJ Moore will have 15. Henry and Harris will get plenty of looks. Rodgers will do his thing. And I think Jackson loses like a high-scoring, interesting game. So now that we're caught back up, we can talk about the 2 teams that I I think a lot of people expect to be competing for the lowest winning percentage this season. We have 12 plus years of history to prove it with Cameron, and it's very difficult to do well your very first fantasy season. So, talking about Cam's team, like typical Cam team, the very top of it has a big name QB and a big name running back, and those guys pretty much have to combine for big points for Cam to reach his win condition. I love Barkley at the flex. I think Zach Ertz was a sneaky pick. Not a huge fan of his receivers. I know Williams got a lot of touchdown looks last season. I think the Crosby pick, he doesn't realize that Green Bay is due for a bad year with Adams leaving. And Scary Terry, again, like a guy that was really good in the last few years but lost severe value this season. And a bench that's weak as a motherfucker. To me, this is a Cam team that is a typical Cam team. It lacks depth, it has holes in it, and it has some top heaviness to it. I rated a C plus personally.
Obviously, he has an elite quarterback with Herbert on the Chargers and Eckler, but his team's very Charger dependent. Like he even has Mike Williams. He has 3 Chargers players, and I think that's going to be an extremely tough division to like kind of count on them for 6 games out of the year. But I do think they potentially have the number 1 offense in that division. So I could see Eckler having a big year and Herbert, but Mike Williams, I don't know, maybe I think he'd be a good wide receiver 2 option, but not a wide receiver 1. I would like to see him put Saquon at his RB2 and probably bring in like Scary Terry as his wide receiver 2 over Russell Gage, or just put him in at flex and get him in the lineup. I like Terry McLaurin. I think he's a better flex option than Elijah Mitchell. So I would give Cameron's overall lineup. I also agree with the bench. His bench is weak as fuck. Like even one of his players are in recovery for being shot up. Like he's even soft on the streets.
Don DeMarco.
I'd probably give him like a D plus.
Yeah. And how do you think Cam is going to manage this season? Do you think he's going to diligently set his lineups and put in the obvious waiver requests?
Well, we discovered years ago, just one night checking his lineup, that he just checks his lineup every Wednesday night and just clicks like the auto lineup, the
The
little
Snickers
like
optimize
yeah,
button, it's called.
optimize, just the he just needs to make his fucking team name Optimizer or something like that, because that's all he does. He just checks every Tuesday and Wednesday and clicks optimize.
Yep.
He's
Oh,
probably, I would say
Cam.
he's probably the worst manager in the league, and that's like, I think I would. It sucks because like your younger sister joins like what, I don't even know how
When
many
she
years
was like
ago.
13.
Yeah,
A
and
long
she's like,
time ago.
she's been a better manager than him since her like 2nd or 3rd year in the league, which is ridiculous. It's like Cam just kind of shows up. He was even late to the fucking draft. He like auto picked
Again.
his first pick or second pick, and it's like,
Yep.
I mean, I think he just plays just because like all of his friends are in here, but he really doesn't care.
You know, the meme last year was Ben doesn't care, but since he's currently incarcerated, I guess the funny thing is like Cam genuinely doesn't care, so it loses its comedic value because
Yeah,
like he'll
Ben's
never.
beating himself up right now, sitting on the inside,
Yeah,
wishing he could be playing fantasy.
exactly. Like I'm sure one of like the first thoughts to run through Ben's head when he woke up in jail, other than oh I made a fucky wucky, was I'm gonna miss the fantasy draft. That was
I don't know if that's what he was thinking about at the time. I'm sure he was like, all right, let me out of this drunk tank. And then they're like, oh, you're facing 2 to 10, my guy. And he's just like, oh, fuck. I'm sure the
Yeah.
last thing on his mind was fantasy football.
No, that was the first thing on his mind.
well, AB just hopped in and we're recording TWIF, so this is perfect timing. If you want to pull up and follow along, AB, we're
Oh,
doing.
I've been
He's been in
listening.
here for a while.
Okay, well, we're doing Cam's team and Ryan's team. If you want to jump in and give your thoughts. Like, what do you think about Ryan's first draft? You were somewhat new to fantasy football. Obviously, now it's your 3rd year, but you can sort of relate to it being your first year. Like, what do you think about Ryan's team?
I wasn't impressed. I'll say that. Um,
Yeah, to me, what jumps out is the lack of running back depth. He has Zeke and Pollard, and really no one else.
yeah, and I would even. I mean, you obviously take Zeke, but Pollard's a close second. It's like what Lilly did last year with the 2 Browns running backs. But nothing. I mean, he got Cup and Hill, which Hill might have a huge year, but you got to Tua's got to prove himself. But I mean, he's got so many players on the same team. So,
Yeah, this is going to be
I
a
mean,
team that just shits the bed some weeks.
he's got 4 players already who've played, and he's got 27 points. So, I mean, I think a typical first year expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing really stands out besides he got Cup and Hill. That's cool, I guess. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
running back
explosive.
depth is poor. Also for Cameron, he's gonna optimize. I like the suggestion by Christian. Just change the name to Optimizer.
Agreed. All right, so as far as ratings go, I gave Cam a C plus as I said, but Ryan I gave a D because you have two running backs on the same team on a team I think is going to have a bad year because of lack of offensive line. That spells poor things for the running backs. I also think he reached on Tua, and I think that Tyreek Hill isn't going to be as good as people think. I don't think that he's going to be as good as he was when he was a Chief. I do love the Tyler Bass pick. I think that was intelligent, and obviously you can't go wrong with Cooper Kupp. And I think Gesicki's solid and Renfro is decent as well, but yeah, overall just you have gaping holes at the running back spot, which
He should honestly put Renfro in for like Pollard or something.
yeah,
Renfro's, I mean, he's a good wide receiver too this year.
I think that Robinson for LA is not going to be very good. I think that like Cooper Kupp is such a big part of that offense that I think you're right. Like he should work in that other guy to the
I
flex,
don't know
Renfro.
where he got Claypool, but that wherever he did it might be a good pick because it seems like he's on a prove it year. Like, are you gonna get your wide receiver contract or not? Because he
Yeah.
had a good first year and last year was just a letdown.
I
Yeah.
honestly don't think Ryan's team's a D. As far as like first drafts go ever in fantasy, like I think he actually has like a pretty decent draft. I would have liked to see him go because he went Cup first. He auto drafted him, trapped in the car wash, and then I think he went Tyreek Hill, but he got. I mean, Zeke in the third round's like a decent pick. I would have liked to see him get like maybe potentially a better RB1, but I also like Pollard a lot this year. I think he takes the starting job from Zeke, but I think it's like kind of a mishap that he has both Dallas Cowboys running backs, which like potentially may not even be a bad thing if they're sharing time. And Pollard like plays pretty well. I like Tua. Um, I think he's like a mobile quarterback. I agree that he has to prove himself. Like I wouldn't say he's like. I could see them maybe competing in the wild card and losing. And then like his receivers, Cup and Hill. Dalton Knox is just like a late pick. Like Ryan's team isn't bad because I wouldn't even say he made bad picks. It was bad. He didn't understand when to pick what position in the draft. I would say like like you said he reached on Tua. I kind of remember him doing that, and he could have like gotten more RB depth. I don't even think he drafted that terribly. It's like he had elite receivers. Like I like Allen Robinson this year. I think he shit the bed the first game. Obviously, Dawson Knox. It's just like kind of like I have three pretty good receivers and like decent RBs, and I have my quarterback. I think Dalton Knox was like his last like starting player pick, and then it was like before his obviously benches. I would have liked to see him start Gesicki over Dawson Knox, but like as far as like being a first year player in fantasy, you see that starting Buffalo's tight end, you're gonna assume like that offense is better than Miami's, and you don't want to start three Dolphins. You'd rather just get like a Buffalo player in there opening game of the year. Why not just like try it? I agree with Hunter Renfro. I think he's going to be a great wide receiver option. I could see him potentially trading Allen Robinson and like Hunter Renfro or even like a Tyreek Hill and keeping Allen Robinson if Allen Robinson bounces back and he wants to keep Renfro as like a wide receiver too. I could see him trading one of those guys and getting like a running back. I would like to see him try and do that. Like he has receivers to trade. Like I like Claypool this year, I like Renfro this year, I like Robinson this year. He can afford to get rid of Cup or Tyreek Hill and like trade for like a solid RB2, like fringe RB1, and like solidify his roster. I
Yep.
really don't think it's that bad of a roster, especially for its being his first draft. I would honestly give him a C plus.
I think this is a roster that can be amended with trading. Cooper
Yeah,
Kupp has some of the highest trade value in the whole league. He's like a Paragon S-class guy with extreme name recognition. that everybody wants. This is a huge fucking trade piece that you can wave around. And tons of people really believe in the Miami Dolphins and think Tyreek is going to have a great year. And obviously he has both Cowboys running backs. You could do some sort of like double running back swap if he wanted, like
Yeah.
Tyreek and Pollard for like 2 running backs or something. But like the potential is there. I just think there are a lot of holes, and he's going to be in situations where like if Miami loses and Dallas loses, it's just going to auto lose pretty much.
Yeah, I would
Lily
like
had-
to. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say Lily had a great year last year with Chubb and Hunt. So I mean, could be a thing because the lack of wide receiving depth in Dallas. But,
True. They traded
it just
Cooper.
yeah, kind of depends on what they're. I mean, how they're playing. Their scheme this year, but I mean, it could be like Lily's. It's all I can really see. I mean, coming from his running back depth.
True
I
enough.
could see him like, if he trades Cup, like I could see him trying to trade to like Jackson. I think Jackson has some RBs to trade. I have like 5 starting running backs. Like I would like to see him try and get rid of Hill or Cup and just trade with potentially like anybody. Like just if he can get a fringe RB1, like that could potentially save his season with this team. Because
Agreed.
I think his receivers are nasty. He has Jasecki and Knox. Like he can just like match up swap those guys at tight end. Like I think Allen Robinson's going to end up having a good year. So
Well, it can be very hard to trade. I think especially in this league, it's easier said than done whenever you go like, oh, I need to make a trade to address this problem. He has the rare luxury of having an insane amount of trade bait and trade firepower on this team.
yeah.
Like
I saw
everybody wants Cooper
Spencer
Kupp.
sent him a trade of like Miles Sanders and DJ Shark for like Allen Robinson and Tony Pollard. Like such a dumbass trade.
What do you think about Spencer's trades in general that he sends out?
He just literally sends spam trades just to troll, and he says more Cowboys in the like comment that he sent to Ryan. Like Ryan texted me it, and I had just woken up and I saw the text, and it was like an hour or two before, and I'm like, fuck no, do not accept that. Like just hoping he did not accept it already.
More Cowboys.
Yeah, it's like more Cowboys. Like he's trading DJ Shark and fucking Miles Sanders for Tony Pollard and Allen Robinson.
Ridiculous.
Like a buy
That's a-
low,
It's
sell high
a
option.
comment you send to Cameron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Cameron just watches it for 6 months sitting in his trade thing. He doesn't even
Yeah.
check them.
Sending trades to Cameron and Lily, it's the worst because all it does is block your own trade slots. They just won't. No matter how good or bad the offer is, they'll never accept, decline, or counter. They'll just let it sit there. It's crazy.
They're literally the worst. I can send Lily and Cameron like 6 trades a year and they won't respond to one. Like I would have better like chances sending like carrier pigeon and like hoping they find it.
Yeah.
It'll be
For real.
funny if when you post this link in the feed of Lily's boyfriend. I guess that's the other new guy.
Yeah,
I feel like
JP.
ends up watching this and he's like, Lily, like they're really shitting on how bad you and your brother are.
Lily's
Paying
good.
attention.
Cameron's
Well, no,
ass.
Lily gets credit on
Lily's
the
a
show.
good manager, but doesn't seem like she knows what trades are.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
she's
As
weak-
far,
she's
as,
weak
far
on
as
trades.
trades go,
Upset.
as far as trades go, like Cameron and Lily are terrible. I think Kevin's pretty active. Like if I send him a trade, normally he declines it like pretty quickly, or he like responds with a counter. So I think he's like good like about checking his team and like trying to go for stuff on the waivers. So
I think
Yeah.
we'll find out this year if this kid is a Watson or not.
Find out
hey,
his.
he's about to collect a first dub against veterans. So
Yeah.
Yeah, he is
Dead
a
on
stacked game.
Thursday. Yeah, that's a good point, AB. All right, let's move on to Spencer and Christian. A hell of a week 1 matchup.
easy.
And I just want to know right out the gate, AB, in a couple words, how would you describe Spencer's draft this year?
I'm going through his players right now.
I think it's like one of the worst drafts he's had.
Yeah, to
If
me,
I'm
the
being
word I
honest.
would use was surprising. A lot of the picks that he made surprised me.
Yeah, one thing too is during the draft, on the Discord, it was only me, Spencer, and Aaron. And a lot of the picks he was making, I was sitting there just screaming, reach, reach.
He was like his running backs, like Antonio Gibson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Miles Sanders. He has like 3 guys that were like hyped up like 2 years ago and just didn't deliver. And like Antonio Gibson, even now, like the coaching staff have like moved him to kick returner. Like he might not even be the starting back for Washington right now. I like Chubb, like I like Murray, like obviously there's like elite players at the positions. Jamar Chase, elite. Kyle Pitts, like great tight end. His Daryl Mooney, like I've seen like a lot of people like him this year as like a wide receiver too. Like his roster might be solid if like Antonio Gibson, Cgauch, or like Miles Sanders, one of those guys play out as like an RB2. But like as far as like a flex and like just betting on Antonio Gibson, who's just got moved to kick return, or like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who like really hasn't panned out. And I, like me being a Chiefs fan, was like hoping that he got traded and we just kept Jerick McKinnon as our RB1. I just wouldn't bet against that or bet for that to happen. Like I don't think he's gonna have a good year this year. I would say he's better off like trying to get like betting on like Michael Carter to start and having a good year, or like even DeAndre Swift getting injured and like James Williams playing. Jamal Williams.
I mean, the only standouts for me on his roster is, I mean, you got Kyler, but anybody could have got Kyler, and you got Jamar. That's really good. Pitts, I mean, decent, but it really depends on his QB's output this year, which we
Yeah,
don't know how
Mariota.
that's going to be. But besides that, like real weak. I mean, Clyde. We both like the Chiefs, but we've seen his output the past 2 years,
Yeah.
and nothing impressive. So, I mean, you got Kyler and you got Chase, but what else, like what are we doing?
Yeah, a lot of the picks seemed a bit weird to me. I'm not high at all on Cleveland this season, especially until Watson comes back. Uh, Pitts is a guy who I think is going to be on a shit tier team with a quarterback I've never thought anything of. And his running backs across the board seem a little weak. I mean, people sort of treat Nick Chubb as though he's not a timeshare. I love the Kyler pick. That was a guy that was on my radar. Amari Cooper, I have no faith in. Miles Sanders gets his touchdown stolen by his quarterback. And to me, this is one of Spencer's weakest drafts, and I gave him a B minus.
Yeah, I like the current Kyler Murray pick as well. I think he's like a top 5 quarterback in fantasy, and I'm expecting to see Spencer try to include him in some like trade packages heading into November when COD releases, because that's typically when he dips down.
Love
Yep.
that.
I would give him a B minus as well.
I'll
AB
trade him
looked
to
great.
I'll trade him to Sean whenever COD comes out.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to give a letter grade for Spencer's team, AB?
C plus.
Okay. And here we have the Cgauch, who starts things off with some Cincy kids. Burrow and Mixon. Absolutely love the Mixon pick. That was a guy I was heavily targeting. Finally, Mixon is on an offense that's actually good. It's just going to get better this season. One of the fabled solo backs, like DeAndre Swift as well. A really good running back, too, who's going to put up decent numbers and is going to get the majority of the looks. I'm not huge on your receivers, although Pittman and Matt Ryan I do like. Henry's solid. Williams, the starting back for Denver, although I think Melvin Gordon is better than a lot of people give him credit for. It feels like he's just been written off completely. Suckup, great kicker. Niners, good defense. And obviously you have Travis Etienne, who's very hyped. I'm not as high on him as you are. I've always liked Boyd. Edmonds is a great option, although I'm not that high on Miami. So overall, I really like this team. Even the Smith cat in Philly, who has tremendous synergy with Hurts. I'm not really worried about Brown coming there. I think that he's still going to be a deep threat. And I think you have the second best roster in the league. I have you at an A minus and Weston at an A plus.
It's decent. I would put Christian right where I'd put what I think about the Dolphins this year. I think it's a wild card team, but I mean, there's so much running back depth. So
Yep.
I could be speaking out of pocket, you know. I love Swift. I think the Lions are not going to be a 500 team, but he's going to get a lot of action.
Over under 6.5 win for the Detroit Lions.
Under.
Okay.
Always the under.
Okay.
For them.
Always bet the under.
I mean, he's got so
Spencer
much
build.
running back depth. I might even put you not as a wild card, but just a playoff team. But there's so much trade potential. The tight end, don't like it, but everything else is pretty good. Like a solid B plus for me. But I personally don't like Christian in fantasy, so uh
That knocked me down
uh,
a letter grade.
yeah,
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 you're
just
like
a
I'm gonna.
half
They,
Would
point.
have been an A plus, but fuck them. So
yeah,
be it.
call that a reverse curve. All right, Cgauch, let's hear about how smart you are. Go for it.
I mean, I just don't want to rate my team like and talk about it.
Well, Spencer and
Uh,
I have done it for years, so you're gonna have to do it too.
I don't give a shit. So I don't want to talk about my own team. I would definitely say me and Weston have the 2 best teams in the league.
You should have
Okay.
used Mixon's mugshot.
That's what that is, I think.
Oh, I didn't know what
It's like
that
his
was
head.
from.
It's just like his head photoshopped on the suit.
Yeah, but
Nice.
there's an American flag in the background, so it's not his mugshot.
Yeah, it's a President Mixon meme.
Yeah, I know what it is. And all right,
There's
so
gonna be American flag.
When
It's
did you
the-
get
It's the
Swift?
Oval Office with his fucking mugshot on
Was
a
Swift
suit.
like a third or fourth?
He was my 2nd round pick. I went Mixon and then Swift.
That's great.
I absolutely love your name and profile pick. I was sort of wondering how many people were going to do Ben-related names for this first week.
I was hoping everyone would do it.
My name's not Ben related.
Well, all right.
So, looking at AB's team here, Dak better in fantasy than he is IRL. I was floored that you took Aaron Jones in the first because of the fact that Dylan was starting to take his touches at the end of last season. I thought there were better options out there, but I like the Josh Jacobs. Tyler Lockett, loved him as a player for years, but without Russ, and his value is basically nothing with Geno Smith throwing to him, honestly. A.J. Brown, I think, will be average, not great. Kelsey's God tier. Hunt is good at getting those red zone looks, and I think that Cleveland's going to have a hard time passing. When I look at your team, the narrative of this team is, what's your record going to be after week 8? Because if you can have a winning record after week 8, you're going to hit unusual power spikes in fantasy with Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins coming to life midway through the season. I think the Jerry Jeudy pick was smart, and I think you drafted in like a really unique way that is going to test your mettle as a manager, because you're going to have basically 2 less bench slots to work with, which will be somewhat difficult to deal with during bye weeks.
Yeah, the Deshaun was a meme pick. Hopkins is definitely like week 6 plus.
Yeah,
How are we doing? Because my roster's only going to get better after 6 if I don't fuck up and trade something badly. But
it's always a possibility with you.
yeah, big possibility. So I'm not lining that out. But I reached for McColl. That was a terrible pick on my part. I like T. Lockett because no matter what, they're throwing the ball. The running back depth in Seattle's weak, and no matter what, the ball's going to be thrown. It's getting thrown to someone. So
Yeah, but
this
it's being
guy's gonna
thrown
get
by
some.
Geno Smith is the point.
Yeah, but he's not going to throw a pick every drive of every game.
Probably
So,
one
like,
every 15 passes.
yeah, but so he's going to get the ball and he's going to get yards. I'm really high on the Eagles. I think they'll win the division. So
Agreed.
Agreed.
Brown, I think Brown, he's going to have, a better than average season. Kareem Hunt, I'm just getting that shared time, but I think that's a good RB, 2 or 3.
Yeah, good
But
flex for sure.
Dak, that's probably gonna be my QB all year, just because they're so. I mean, it's so weak at wide receiver over in Dallas that Dak's just gonna be running it probably more than Zeke or Pollard. So I don't know. I think it's a decent team. I think hands down my best draft.
Yes.
But I don't know. There's no bench depth, and that's because I was fucking memeing it. But it's decent. I think like a B.
Okay. Cgauch, what do you think?
I like Dak. I think he's like a good fantasy production quarterback. Aaron Jones, I like this year. Kimchi Cowboys also happens to have AJ Dillon. I like that kind of like running back tandem in Green Bay. I think they're going to be getting like quite a lot of work with like all the targets leaving with Devontae Adams. Like the ball's going to be spread out quite a bit. I do not like Josh Jacobs this year, just because I think he's a part of like one of the better offenses in the league, but I do think they're going to be like a pass first offense, and there's just so many mouths to feed. I don't really see him getting a lot of like the dump off pass plays or like a ton of run plays. Like I think he's going to be like 30 or 40, like maybe even 50 yards a game, 60 yards a game, maybe even 70, 80, 90. I don't know. Let's just keep going up by 10. But I think he could get like potentially some goal line touchdowns. I think he's more of like a low end RB2, but he's a part of like a decent offense. Lockett, I agree with you. Like I think they have to throw the ball. They're going to be playing from behind a lot. There's just they can't throw it to DK every pass. So I agree with that. Like I think he's a low end wide receiver too. I like AG Brown. I think he's one of the better receivers in the league, and he's kind of the future of the league right now. Like as far as like being one of the up and coming receivers, he's still relatively young. Kelsey, obviously love him, elite. Kind of nervous for him as far as production, just because like he's been doing it for so long. It's gonna be he's getting to like those older years to where it's gonna be like, can he play the full season, or is he gonna start sitting out a couple of games throughout the year? So I hope he stays healthy. Obviously, being a Chiefs fan, best tight end in the league. Kareem Hunt's about as solid as a flex you can get, potentially even like an RB2, depending on like who's playing better this year, whether it be Chubb or Hunt. Butker, like great kicker for an elite offense, and then Rams defense, like can't really get as good as that. I agree. I don't think your bench has very much depth on it. I like the McKissick pick just because if the Antonio Gibson plays out how I'm thinking it's going to play out, as far as like him being removed from the starter, I think McKissick's going to get most of the passing production out of that offense. Hopkins, I like him just keeping on your bench, like as a safety net after week 6. Like you really only have to win 3 out of your next 6 games potentially, and you get to have him, and then you'll have AJ Brown and D Hop, which I think is like great. And it would just leave you with like an RB2 hole potentially, depending on how Jacobs plays out. I like Mecole, but kind of gotta see. I think the ball's going to be thrown around quite a bit on the Chiefs offense. Like I don't think there's going to be like a clear wide receiver one other than like Juju, but I think it'll still be close. I like Jerry Jeudy this year. He's having the best quarterback he's had of his career. I like Cortland Sutton as well, so I think that offense is going to be really well. That could be like a potential trading piece, or even like a flex option if Hunt's in like a bad matchup. I would give this team like a C+.
I think the letter I fall on is B-. I think it's definitely your best
I was
draft.
thinking about giving that as well.
Now, if you can just not do drunken rage trades and make it worse whenever you lose a tough game, you might be a playoff threat this season.
Just need to not try and flame Christian on bad trades.
All right, so if we look at Aaron's team here, he has Matt Stafford, who a lot of people just sort of discounted that elbow issue he was having, and then you had other people who thought it was a big deal. Now, I don't put a lot of stock in week 1 results, but we can just sort of assume I think that he's going to be as good as he was last year, but remember, he never runs, so. And Alvin Kamara has a potential suspension coming up. I think if he doesn't get suspended, he'll be exceptional. A.J. Dillon splitting time with Aaron Jones. I like that pick. Adams is one of those very hyped players going on a new team. I hesitate to say that he's going to be as good as he was in Green Bay with Rodgers throwing to him in a funnel. It's a lot of mouths to feed on that offense. And that's just a guy I sort of wanted to stay away from this draft. Metcalf, you guys think that they're going to throw a lot because they're playing from behind, which is true. I just don't believe in Geno Smith, and I feel like all the value of Lockett and Metcalf came from the fact that they had Russ throwing to them.
I'm a Drew Lock believer.
Are you? That is crazy to me.
I don't think that like receiving tandem will be like, I don't know, even like if you could dare say elite as they were. I think they'll be like decent, like wide receiver 2s for both of them, like lower end. I think DK would probably be higher than Lockett. I like Devontae Adams this year. I think they're gonna have to like spread that offense out and get like Renfro and Waller on islands, and I don't think they're gonna be able to double team Adams a lot. And if they do, like Waller and Renfro are gonna eat up quite a bit, so that's gonna be like hard to stop because Adams like one-on-one against anybody, you're kind of throwing him the ball. I like Kamara this year. I think he's an elite RB in the league if he stays healthy, but that's kind of like the story for every elite player. If you stay healthy, you're gonna be elite. Goddard, I actually do like this year. I don't see him getting a lot of touchdowns, but I could see him getting like those Jason Witten yards, like just getting like those short, dumpy passes through the middle, like continuing the drives, like 2 or 3 catches a drive, just consistent production, and like sometimes getting the TDs. I don't like Cordell Patterson, the Atlanta running back. I think that offense is just going to be terrible. And I don't like his matchup this week against New Orleans either. I think they have a really solid defensive line. Gay, obviously, good kicker for the Rams. Stafford, I agree. It's kind of play it by ear to see how his elbow's going, but I think he could be potentially like a good fantasy quarterback if he gets healthy. I like AJ Dillon as like a decent RB2. Cowboys defense, yeah, all right. And then his bench, I like Lazard this year, but he's doubtful already this week, so he may just have an health issue this season. So we'll see how that goes. Adam Thielen's kind of washed. I
Yeah.
like Kirk Cousins. I honestly like. I could see people argue like Kirk Cousins is potentially like a better fantasy quarterback than Matthew Stafford. Obviously, like Stafford's elite, got a Super Bowl ring. I don't see Kirk Cousins taking Minnesota to a Super Bowl, but I think he's like decent for fantasy, and I probably would have started him this week against Green Bay. But it's kind of hard to predict that the Rams offense is going to get like shut out like that, and you kind of have to bet on Stafford to have a good elbow to play that game. I think AB wins this week against Aaron, but I would give Aaron a better grade as far as his team goes. I would give him a B minus.
Yeah, I think AB takes it down this week, and I'm gonna have to agree with you on giving Aaron a B minus. Quite
I
a bit
think
of,
Aaron, sorry to cut you off, but I think Aaron will be like fighting for a playoff spot, whereas I disagree with you on AB's team. I don't think AB's team gets to the playoffs. I think he's like 7th or 8th and like barely misses it. And then I think Aaron kind of scrapes in like right ahead of AB, like 7th or 6th, and like gets the last playoff spot. Or doesn't.
Alrighty, so that was the TWIF episode. We
We
rated
didn't
all the
predict who would
teams.
win between me or Spencer this week.
Okay, so you go ahead and go for it.
I win.
Okay. And with that, that's
let me
the
check it
episode.
out.
Easy.
Yeah, I give it to Christian.
I think it'll be close, and I also give it to the Gauch. Like and sub, easy.